So, does this at least dissuade people who thought that the president would be in the hip pocket of the Russians and be very afraid to take them on? Does that put that issue to rest? To Fox News national security analyst Walid Phares. Walid, what do you think?
I think that should clarify to many people who were and are skeptical about the White House or the president position with regard to the current conflict or tensions with Russia. That should clarify it. It will escalate, and that is going to be ahead of us. The Russians will respond, and I am sure that NATO and the United States will continue to respond. But it has a pinnacle. It has a point whereby they need to agree, both sides, that, number one, chemical weapons cannot be used at all. Full stop. Second, going after dissidents in the West, including in the States or in Europe, is something that the Russians should commit not to do. And of course, the Russians will ask for something in return. But at one point in time, this crisis will have to be resolved.
You know, Walid, maybe it was you I was listening to not too long ago talking about, you know, when someone has ultimate and unrivaled power, and Vladimir Putin reelected to another 6-year term, they get cocky, but they can also get paranoid. And we're at the paranoid stage with Vladimir Putin, enraged at this action. I'm sure he remembers that he had held off on firing or getting a lot of American personnel out of his country after Barack Obama did that right before leaving office. And now the guy he preferred for president, I'm not saying he rigged the election for him, I'm not saying that, but that the guy he preferred for president is doing this now. He's got to be apoplectic.
He is, but his intelligence services, I imagine, and many of their analysts understand that the United States, even if it has a president that wanted to have an opening, as the previous president tried to, the previous administration, and 2 previous administrations as well since the Cold War, they understand that there are red lines. I mean, we cannot be away from Great Britain when it is witnessing such an incident. I mean, they know what the red lines are. Where it could change is not going to be in Europe. It's going to be in the Middle East. As it's well known, we need to talk to the Russians for issues in Syria or in New York, where you are, at the Security Council. We are sitting in front of the Russian ambassador who have there a very powerful tool, which is the veto. So at one point, basically, we need to figure out what to do with, but we need to apply what we need to apply because a red line has been crossed.
You know what I noticed, Walid, no matter whether a Democratic or Republican presidents, those who think they have seen a potential for change in the relationship between the 2 superpowers, that nothing really does change, that the cynicism and the careful scrutiny of each side, and even the notion that they can't make much progress, that doesn't really change in the end. It still is a tough relationship.
I agree with you. Actually, if you look at it from a historical perspective, not much has changed in terms of how the leaderships deal with each other since the Cold War. I mean, we had much more severe crises, the Berlin crisis, the Cuba crisis, and at the end of the day, they know. I mean, we know they have nukes, we have nukes. We cannot get to beyond a certain point. Everything below is possible, but that point we cannot reach.
Yeah, it is amazing. All right, thank you, my friend Walid Phares.